SL, it's good to see you again. Thanks for coming back.
Absolutely, Michael. Very glad to be with you.
I would definitely describe you as somebody that's very good on social media and particularly on, I hate that they changed it from Twitter to X because tweeting just sounds so much better than posting.
I know.
But you're good at, you are very good on X with like what you put out there and sharing and I've seen, I mean, you and I've known each other now for a few years and just watch your audience just grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, I'm being throttled by the blob in the US, but still, so I'm doing okay because like 1 year ago, I had like say 30,000 followers, and I would get 1 million views a day very easily, sometimes with 2 million. But now I have like what, 160,000 followers, like five times more, but I'm still getting the same number of views. So I know that the blob is after me, but that's life. So you have to fight. But so I had this tweet about Syria, about what really happened in Syria. So I had a long thread with a lot of photos and facts and charts and news headlines, and it was retweeted by Michael Flynn. So do you know Michael Flynn?
Sure.
Yeah. So he's a famous general who campaigned with Trump in 2016. And he was working for the Pentagon in 2012. And he was the chief of the DIA, which is the Defense Intelligence Agency. And he wrote a memo to the guys back in Washington, D.C., saying, hey, the people we are supporting in Syria, the guys who are fighting Assad, is basically terrorist groups and Salafists and Muslim Brotherhood. So he was the first guy to, to spill the beans. And he was like sort of like a whistleblower, although he didn't say it to the public. But for that, Barack Obama fired him. So then he joined a Trump campaign, and then that's how Trump was able to uh, put an end, for a few years to supporting the jihadists in Syria. But when Biden came back, he went back to supporting the Al Qaeda, ISIS, and this whole variety, the garden variety of the jihadists. And so they finally have taken over Syria. So that's the sad part. But for my the tweet, so General Flynn is now following me on X, and he retweeted my thread, and it now has like 7.5 million views. Just the main the tweet, and then the following tweets have like another 7.5 million views. So it's been a very good last couple of days on X for me.
Well, and let's get into that here because what you wrote about, starting it was what happens, and I'll put your X handle up here when I publish the episode, and I encourage everybody to follow SL. Can I quote you here? SL,
Yeah,
I know
sure.
these are your words,
Yeah,
but
yeah, absolutely.
so it started with what happened since 2011 was not a civil war. It was a proxy war waged by 100,000 plus jihadists flown into Syria from all over the world. The second part was weapons also flowed from all over the world and they were sneaked into Syria, mostly across the Syria-Turkey border. Some came in through Syria and Iraq as well. The third part, the collusion to topple Assad involved many countries. U.S. and Israel supplied weapons, money, and propaganda. Saudi Arabia and Qatar provided money. Al Jazeera did the propaganda. Turkey and Jordan played key roles in logistics. UK provided propaganda and established the White Helmets. France recruited traitors. The two main reasons, fourth part, two main reasons, U.S. and Israel want total hegemony in the region. The U.S. has had plans to break up many countries in the region, plus the Greater Israel Project. Qatar wanted a gas pipeline through Syria to Turkey to Europe, but Assad wanted an Iranian pipeline. Part 5. In 2010, the New York Times travel section listed 31 best places to visit in the world, and Damascus, capital of Syria, was ranked number 7. Why? Because Syria under Assad was peaceful, safe and prosperous. Part 6. In 2010, Vogue magazine had a nice article on Asma Assad, the First Lady of Syria. A Rose in the Desert described all her great works in education, theater, charity, hospitals, etc. Asma Assad was born and raised in the UK, where she met her husband, who was an ophthalmologist. Part 7. I'm getting my numbering screwed up here. The West once loved Assad. He was called the Lion of Damascus. France gave him the highest award, Legion of Honor. Queen Elizabeth invited Assad and his wife. Nancy Pelosi flew to Syria. European plus Arab leaders met with him all the time. Even the Pope went to Syria. Part 8. Syria under Assad was secular and moderate. Sunnis, Shiites, Christians, Alawites, Kurds, Armenians got along with each other. No Al-Qaeda, no Sharia law, no Muslim Brotherhood. 9. Syrians love Assad. He could walk around and drive around Damascus and Syria without a huge security force. In fact, the Arab world loved him. In 2009 Zogby poll, an American firm, Assad was the most popular leader in the region. So if you ever write a book, I should do your audio for you.
Yeah.
How am I doing? Am I doing okay?
Yeah, fantastic.
Assad is also a good father and a husband. He raised smart, down-to-earth, and compassionate children. Asma Assad was the first ideal lady. But for reasons discussed earlier, U.S. and its evil friends decided to do a regime change in Syria. The moderate rebels were neither moderate nor rebels. They are low-Q extremists and head-chopping terrorists aligned with Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Al-Qaeda equals al-Nusra equals HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. The U.S.-funded rebels are murderous thugs who ruthlessly execute men and women. They will kill Shiites and Christians just because of their religion. They have destroyed numerous Shiite shrines and mosques from Christian churches. Syrian rebels are actually jihadists from all over the world, including Uyghurs from Xinjiang, China. These fanatics have terrorist camps for their own children who are brainwashed to become even suicide bombers. This is not a popular uprising against President Assad. So, and I could, I encourage everybody to finish reading this, but to read the whole thing. So we look at this now, we're a few days after the removal of Assad, and where do you see things sitting in Syria as of now?
Yeah, it's really very, very dangerous, and it's very hard to predict the future. The worst case scenario, Syria could turn into Libya. The NATO forces destroyed Libya in 2011. The same year, they started the proxy war against Syria. And now, for the last 13 years, Libya has been stuck in a civil war. There are just warlords all over the country. There's no proper government. They're selling slaves for like, $50 for a slave. It's just, so Libya is totally destroyed. The same thing could happen to Syria. That's the worst case scenario. The second case is that it becomes, the Al-Qaeda Central, okay? Because the rebel groups that have taken over Syria now, it's basically the Al-Qaeda. Just like you read my tweet, maybe 100 to 150,000 jihadists from all over the world came to Syria in 2012, and they've been there since then. So these guys could be running this they're a very strange mix, they are Sunni fanatics like the Taliban. So, women have to cover from head to toe. And so you see the schools that they run. They took over this province in Syria, and they were running that for the last 5 years or so. So if you look at the schools in that the district or the province, you'll see that there are like 7, 8-year-old girls in school, uh, uh, like basically in a black dress, like a burqa, I mean the niqab, and all you can see is the eyes, you know. So so they're like on one part, they're religious fanatics. They don't like the Christians. They don't like Shiites. So they kill Shiites and the Christians. They raped nuns, uh, and they destroyed all the churches whenever they could. So they are religious fanatics. And then they're also like drug cartels. They kill people. Like they just shoot people. Like there's no law, there's no due process, there are no courts. Somebody doesn't like somebody, they just drag the person out and they just riddle the person with bullets. There are like lots of really horrible videos on the internet on what these jihadists have been doing, and they even like behead people, and then they put the head in spikes in public places, very gruesome. And that like there was this one video where they beheaded a 11-year-old Palestinian boy, just because he's Palestinian. And then in another case, they murdered a Syrian soldier, and the rebel leader, I mean, so took out the heart of that soldier, and on video, he was biting it and swallowing pieces of the heart. So these are like monsters, They're like low IQ monsters, religious fanatics, like suicide bombers. They, I mean, groom their own kids, like 6, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old boys are groomed to become suicide bombers. So that is the second part, is that it could become like a center for jihadists, and people could just fly from all over the world into this the new Syria. And so my worst fear is that the CIA is going to love this, okay? And they're going to have all these jihadists trained, and then they can send the jihadists back to China, back to Russia, to Chechnya. If you remember, like what happened in the late 1990s and the early 2000s, Chechnya was full of terrorists, and they could do that to my country too, to India, because India has a lot of Muslims, and there's always the Hindu-Muslim problems. So if the CIA is not happy with India, they could send all these jihadists into India through Bangladesh and Pakistan, and they could do that to Europe. Okay, so say for example, if like some country like Romania or Poland or Slovakia, they're not going along with the globalist themes, like to get a lot of, I mean, illegal immigrants and other EU projects with their the LGBTQ whatever, so they could bully all these countries around the world with these terrorists.
And they could bring it home here to the United States, where I live as well.
Yeah. So, for example, like say that if they want to take away the guns from the Americans, okay, then the CIA can just sneak in a couple of jihadists and to give them weapons and go shoot people, and then they will use that as an excuse, right? This is like a false flag sort of a thing. So they attack the Americans, they go to a mall, they go to wherever, and then they can say, oh my God, it's because of guns. So let's ban guns. So the jihadists are like useful, the idiots, and they've been that way for, this actually started, Michael, in the 1950s, believe it or not. So there's this famous photograph of President Eisenhower meeting with the Muslim Brotherhood at the White House in the 1950s. So that's when the deep state made a deal with the Muslim Brotherhood, who were very violent, but who were like borderline terrorists, but they were not really terrorists, but just a violent group, religious group. So they used the Muslim Brotherhood to wreak havoc in the the Arab nations, because the US was afraid that all these secular Arab nations like Syria and Egypt, they were all going to come together and they were going to form this pan-Arab nations, and they're going to kick out the the imperial powers. So just to win the geopolitical game, the U.S. Became friends with Muslim Brotherhood, and the CIA sent the Muslim Brotherhood to Germany, and they built these huge mosques. The CIA provided them with millions of dollars every year, and and then in the 1950s, the Muslim Brotherhood caused a lot of problems in Syria, thanks to the US support. And then Bashar Assad's father, he was the leader of Syria for like 40 years or so. And in 1982, he totally crushed the Muslim Brotherhood, like ruthlessly. He crushed, he killed like 10,000 of the Muslim Brotherhood members. This was in 1982, I believe. So then they banned Muslim Brotherhood in many of the Arab nations. And so now, 40 years after that, the incident, the Muslim Brotherhood has taken over Syria. What a sweet vengeance for them. But it's bad news for the rest of the world.
Well, and wasn't it Gaddafi? I mean, he had them. Excuse me. He had them on the run in Libya, if memory serves me. And it wasn't until NATO got involved, particularly Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, started bombing Gaddafi's military, and all of a sudden the jihadists got the upper hand, and eventually, didn't they pull him out and kill him right there? It was on video, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. So thankfully, that did not happen to Assad. So he was able to go to Moscow, So he was a doctor in Syria, and he never wanted to go into politics. He was a doctor. He stayed away from politics, and then he went to London. He became like an ophthalmologist, and then he met his wife, who's also of Syrian background, but she was born and raised in the UK. She came from a very rich family, but she's very smart, very down to earth. And she went to college. She studied, computer science. Very, very smart lady. And then she worked for J.P. Morgan and the Deutsche Bank. So she did not want anything to do with politics. He did not want to be the leader of Syria, but his brother, he died in an accident, or he was like maybe murdered. And then his dad, he called Bashar Assad. He's like, hey, we need you. We need somebody very well educated, broad-minded, progressive, and visionary for the 21st century. Can you come and fix the country? So then he became the leader in year 2000. And for the first 10 years, he did like an amazing job. Syria's GDP was growing rapidly. There were millions of people from all over the world visiting Syria because it has like an amazing history. Okay, so Jesus Christ was in Syria. Okay, so Jesus Christ traveled through Syria. He preached, and he got a lot of followers. And Saint Peter, right? He's like, the leader of the apostles, or the first pope, so to say. And it was in Syria that Jesus baptized Saint Peter and made him the leader of the apostles. And so during those days, the Christians were also persecuted. So the Christians would build these small churches. Inside the mountains. Okay, so like they would go underneath the caves, and they would build these beautiful churches, and those churches are still around these days. And so this is a mind-blowing fact once more. So there is this town or city in Syria. It's like way up in the mountains. It's called Maulula. And in Maulula, they speak the same language that Jesus spoke. And it's called, the Aramaic, right? So, and that is the only place in the whole world where they speak Jesus' language. And it's like a very, very, unique language. If you listen to it, you hear people talk. It's so beautiful and it's so unique. So Syria has such a rich history, and it was part of, the Roman Empire, and it was a very big city for, the Roman emperor, who built these like amazing palaces, colosseums, and it's in a city called Palmyra. So if you go to Palmyra, you would think you are like in Rome or in Greece. And then China, 2,000 years ago, the Chinese had their Silk Road, and it would come, the Chinese goods would come all the way from China through Central Asia, through Persia, and it would come to Syria. And then from Syria, because of its very strategic location, from Syria, the ships would take the Chinese goods to Greece and to Rome. So it's a country with a beautiful history, and it's very it was very multicultural. So under the Assad families rule, there was no Sharia law, and all of the Christians were fully protected, so they could celebrate Christmas. They could have beautiful big churches. They could have parades on Sundays. Nobody would bother them, right? So, I mean, as all of that is going to change dramatically, the churches in Syria have already said for this year there won't be any celebration for Christmas. Very sad.
So with this new, I don't even know how many factions are within the country now, but I had in the last couple of days, man, it's been a great week talking to people, including yourself, and then I get more conversations ahead. And but I had Paul Craig Roberts on yesterday, and he was saying how. And then I have had Matt Bracken on. I don't know if you follow Matt Bracken, former Navy SEAL. He provides a really good analysis. I've had him, ironically, I've had him on 3 times this week, and talking. Had him on solo, then with Matt Smith, and then Michael Yan yesterday. And but Paul Craig Roberts was saying how one, the Muslims, because they're different factions, that they can't get organized, and he who strikes first in this case with Israel wins. And I mean, so being that now Israel has, moved in to part of Syria, I can't imagine they're going to leave at this point. I mean, I'm seeing the Israeli flag is already gone up. It's already been raised. So do you think that these factions are going to fight back or fight with each other, or are they going to just, because of the pipeline, the gas pipeline, they're going to pay everybody off and everybody's just going to be fat and happy, so to speak?
Yeah. So, we'll see. The blob in the US, it thinks they're so smart, so they think they can, manage these terrorists, right? Uh, so, for example, like the first guy to plan this, the Mujahideen was Big New Brzezinski, right? So he was the advisor to Jimmy Carter. So in 1979, he came up with the brilliant idea of recruiting all these fanatics and drug dealers, like in Afghanistan, to fight the Soviet Union. And they did the same, propaganda for the Americans, right? So it's called, the atrocity propaganda. So they said, oh, the Russians are murdering pregnant women, blah, blah, blah. Just the standard atrocity propaganda, so it always involves torture, rape, babies. So then the US gave the Mujahideen the Stinger missiles and all of that, and then they were able to defeat the Soviet Union. But in Syria, it was like 1,000 times worse. Okay, so the CIA just did not give the Stinger missiles or the shoulder-powered missiles, the anti-tank missiles. They gave them like huge rockets and mortars and cannons and tanks. Like these are like, the multiple rocket launchers, so it looks like, so it has like, 15 different tubes, and they can fire one rocket per second, or one, small missile. So these jihadists are now like much, much worse and much, many times more dangerous than the Mujahideen who became the Taliban and the Al Qaeda. So we'll see, but the U.S., the Washington D.C. blob thinks that if we can control the oil and the money, once we control the budget, then we can control the jihadists. So we'll see how this is going to work. But they are, playing with the fire.
Do you think that who do you think provided the most of the money here? The CIA, Israel, Turkey, or was it a collective effort?
Yeah, it was a collective effort. So in terms of the money, I would say Saudi Arabia and Qatar. They gave the most in terms of the cash, right? And so they have a lot of money. And Saudi Arabia wanted to, spread its Wahhabism. They didn't like that the Muslims in Syria were wearing, skirts and going to college and partying in dance clubs. All this, it really bothered the fanatics in Saudi Arabia. And for Qatar, they wanted the pipeline from Qatar through Saudi Arabia, through Jordan, through Syria, and then to Europe. I mean, through Turkey and then to Europe. So,
And
so
now, and now,
Qatar,
and now that not to cut you off, but now that Turkey controls the airspace, right? Because they've moved Russia's military bases. Those bases are still there, I
yeah.
believe.
So there's a base in Latakia. It's the naval base.
Have they said what they're going to do with that, though? Are they going to allow Russia to stay there, or is it?
Yeah, that seems to be the case so far. They seem to have said okay for Russia to have the base at least temporarily. So they're not going to kick them out yet.
So, do you think that the money that was being provided to set all this off was it also paid to some of the tops of Assad's army to get them to stand down? Because it doesn't appear there was much of a fight.
Right, right. Yeah. So that happened in the last 2 weeks. So for like 14 years, but and his the military and the people, they fought off the jihadists, and they basically won because what happened was when Trump he came to power in 2017, he figured out the truth. Like there was no such thing as moderate rebels, there were no freedom fighters. These were all freaking jihadists. So the first thing that Trump did was to place the jihadist leader Al Golani on the most wanted list. So then Trump's the deep state or the State Department, they put out a statement saying that whoever captures this guy will get $10 million. Okay, but now the same group is Biden is going to take them off the terrorist list, and the guy who has been a terrorist leader for 7-8 years is now going to be just a normal guy. Soon he's going to visit Washington D.C. in like a suit and a tie. So ridiculous. So this guy was actually a terrorist who came from Saudi Arabia to fight the U.S. The military. Back in Iraq in 2003, and then he got captured by the Americans in 2005, and then he spent 6 years in a jail that was run by the U.S. Okay, so what happened was basically the CIA, found him to have good leadership skills in the prison, and then the CIA was like, "Wow, too bad! Such a smart and a very a tough guy has to spend the rest of his life in prison. Hey, buddy, well, listen, would you like to start the Al Qaeda in Syria and fight for us? So that was the deal. So then he was released from Baghdad's prison. He went to Syria and he started the Al Qaeda chapter in Syria. And he's been the Al Qaeda leader since 2012. But now he is no longer a terrorist. He's a very respectable person.
He's a reformed man. That's all.
Exactly, reformed man. He's like, I was
Reformed. Reformed.
blind.
He's a reformed man. Reformed.
Yeah. Like if you read the Bible, like there's this, the parable about the guy going to, he loses his sight on the way to Damascus. So it's like that for the terrorists.
So do you think that?
But we'll see, and then, what will happen is, but 3-4 years later, he's not going to listen to the CIA. There are going to be some disagreements, and then they'll put him back on the terrorist list, and they will blame him. Oops.
Oh, you're good. You're good. You
Okay.
there? Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
froze for a second, but so it's a vicious cycle basically. He'll go back on the terrorist
Yeah.
list, and then something will happen, and they'll recruit him unless he gets killed in between. So, do you think that some of the top commanders then were bought off?
Yes. Yeah. It's not because they were really bad people, but I've spoken to a British journalist who lives in Syria, and she talked about how the currency has lost its value so much since the war started, and now the average Syrian makes only like $100 a month. So it's like a very, very bad situation. So when you have such a bad situation and you get a phone call from the deep state and they tell you, hey, Mr. Commander of the Syrian military, we're going to deposit $1 million in a Swiss bank in your name, and your wife and kids can move to London or to New York, then what is he gonna say? Okay, fine, right?
So what happens now to the rest of the Syrian army?
Yeah, that's a big question. A lot of them are going to get brutally murdered by the jihadists, and then the others will get a chance to either flee the country or to stay with the military, but to say, they have to pledge that they'll be faithful to the Islamist Syria.
Now, you can stop me here if you disagree, but Gaza, the Palestinians, they're done, right? It's fair to say. Hezbollah, done. For now, right? Nobody's ever completely gone, but for now. Do you think Hezbollah negotiated this truce or agreed to this truce with Israel because they knew what was coming in Syria? Because I've been seeing that float around on X too.
No, they were just, Israel had this, the mastermind thing, right? They killed all the leaders, within a matter of a few days.
With those pagers, you talk about the pagers and the walkie-talkies?
The pagers and then the bombs, So Hezbollah's leader was Nasrallah, and he had been Hezbollah's leader for 32 years. And, they figured out where he was, maybe using the pager or using the spies, the informants. So they killed Nasrallah, who had been the leader for 32 years. And then they killed his successor. And then they killed the leaders of the Hamas. and they attacked Iran. So it's been a fantastic geopolitical success for the Israelis. I mean, so Netanyahu has been dreaming of this since the 1990s. He got a bunch of the neocons from the U.S. like Paul Wolfowitz and Richard Pearl, and these guys they wrote a paper in 1996, I believe. It was called a clean break, and they said, forget about peace with Palestinians and peace with the neighbors. We just have to crush them all and to establish our superiority, the hegemony over this region. So that's why I think that the Israelis were behind the 9/11 attacks. So this was the only way that Israel could get the U.S. to go and do the dirty job for Israel, right? So, like General Wesley Clark, he said, right, how he spoke with somebody a few days after 9/11, and they already had plans to to defeat 7 countries in 5 years. And now they have accomplished 6 of those 7 goals, right? Syria, Somalia, Sudan, Lebanon, uh, I mean, Iraq, Libya. So they got rid of 6 countries from the list of 7 countries. So it's a huge success for now. We just don't know that if it's going to stay successful forever.
That's what Matt Bracken was talking about too. It appears that Israel now is the dominant force in the Middle East, but he said it's also similar to when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, right? You think that all of a sudden Japan is the winner, but then there's a next phase that will come, and which I thought was a really good perspective that he provided. And I have to send you that clip where he was talking about. I'll send it to you after I put it on X, and I encourage people to listen to that. That conversation with Matt and Michael Yana that I put up this morning, but. What do you think happens in Lebanon?
Yeah, I think Lebanon will be okay because the society is stuck in between. There are like a lot of people who do not want anything to do with the jihadists, the fighting. They just want to be left alone. And then there is the Islamic group, which is very pro-Hezbollah. But I think that the Lebanese, the Christians and the Sunnis pretty much want to be left alone. And it's only the Shiites who are very strongly pro-Hezbollah. So I think that Lebanon will try to seek neutrality, because it's a very, very small place, they cannot really stand up against Israel, and they don't want to become another Gaza, because the Israelis are so ruthless. They can kill, they can bomb like another 500 apartment complexes in the next month, and nobody in the world will speak out against Israel.
Yeah, I thought, in the numbers you and I both know are what they're reporting in Gaza are way, way below what I believe is the actual number, and who knows what that is at this point? A couple 100,000, maybe more. I thought the world would be a little more harsher on Israel for that, and yet they don't seem to be. And Paul said this yesterday too. If they were to, because at this point, what are you going to do with the remaining people in Gaza, right? And if Israel were to continue this bombing to kill as many as they could, I don't know that would that would be tolerated. Could be wrong, but
Yeah.
so I wonder now, those Palestinians, the remaining ones, what will they do with them? Will they put them in Lebanon? Will they put them in Egypt? Will they
Yeah.
allow them to live there?
Yeah, so like, this is this is okay. So in one of the Israeli big websites, like the Times of Israel or the Jerusalem Post, uh, the title of the article was that Israel needs Lebensraum. What is the word? The German word? So Lebensraum. It was, Hitler's word for saying that but Germany needs more space for its people, you know. So if some other person, so if there is a Russian media that says Russia needs Lebensraum, the entire the U.S. media and think tanks will be screaming, saying, "Oh my God, Russian media uses the Nazi language. Look, Russia is a Nazi." But the Israelis can do that, right? So it's like because I'm a Jew and I can borrow the Nazi, phrase, and so nobody can say that I'm a Nazi. So like this is the political the correctness, but like they've had a dream of the greater Israel, and it's been their dream since 1948. If you go back and look at the Israeli terrorist groups like Lehi, Stern Gang, blah blah. So there were these three major terrorist groups for the Jews in the 1940s. And they blew up hotels. They would kill British soldiers and they would hang the British soldiers from the trees. They would like murder and rape Palestinians to drive them out of villages. They would rape 13, 14-year-old Palestinian girls and they would laugh about it. So that terrorist group, they had the map of the greater Israel. And that includes parts of Syria, parts of Iraq, parts of Jordan. So they've had this dream for a long time, the Zionists. So now this is the best opportunity to make that dream come true.
So I want to ask you, and this was another, well, two things. Uh, does Russia view this as a defeat?
Yeah, yeah, because they spent a lot of time and energy and money and also the geopolitical, because Putin supported Syria. Sorry. So that's one of the reasons that the US-Russia relations became even worse. Because if Putin had just stayed away from Syria back in 2014, 2015, then the US would not be so mad. Uh, so yeah, for all that has gone down the tube. The only thing that maybe Russia can tell itself is that we got some fighting experience. For the military, uh, uh, wars are the best way to learn, right? Because if you had a huge military, but you don't have a war for like 30, 40 years, then the military becomes very weak. So, you know, that's the only silver lining in the dark cloud for Russia.
But because of that, and that's why, I've gotten different perspectives on this. Some people have said that, they suffered a loss, which, I mean, they suffered a loss, but, it's a lily pad in comparison to Ukraine. And now they're just allocating the resources back to Ukraine. and the fact that if they can keep those bases in Syria, they still have a presence. Now, Paul said this yesterday in regards to the neocons, that they want to force Putin in order to defeat Russia, put him in a position to where, Putin, the only way to get out of it at this point is, pressing the red button, which Putin won't do because he's hesitated to further escalate the war, escalate any of the conflicts. Do you share that? Do you agree with that?
It's kind of complex, because Russia doesn't want wars. Okay, so why would he want a war? As a Putin has always been very pragmatic. He made friends with all of the European leaders. He built these massive pipelines to Europe. He had the German chancellor join the board of the directors for the Russian gas pipelines. So Putin is, basically a businessman who wants to do what's best for Russia. And what's best for Russia is, peace. Why would he want to lose his biggest the customer, which was Europe, right? So if Russia had good relations with Germany, those two can, make Germany great again and make Russia great again, right? So you have all these brilliant, smart guys in Germany with, the industrial might, and Russia has all the natural resources you can think of. It's not just, the oil and gas, but coal, uranium, timber, platinum, diamond, whatever you can think of, Russia has. And so it's, but thankfully Russia found China as a sort of the replacement to sell oil and gas. But ideally, Russia would like to stay neutral and be friends with Europe, be friends with China, be friends with India, and sell their products.
Do you think that Putin slow walked Ukraine from the get-go, and that he should have moved a little bit faster?
Yeah, so like this is the thing, right? There are a lot of geopolitical considerations because if, let's say if Putin had defeated Ukraine in, say, 6 months, okay, then the entire Europe would be freaking out, right? All the Baltic states, like Estonia, Latvia, and then all the smaller countries like Finland, Sweden, Denmark,
Poland,
Poland,
yeah.
everybody would be screaming about World War II. Like they'll be like, "Oh my God, Putin defeated Ukraine in 6 months, and now he's going to come after Poland, Romania, Hungary, Czech Republic, Germany, blah blah blah." So I think that's one reason that Putin drew out the war to show the world that, hey, look, we're taking 3 years to defeat Ukraine, okay? And we have only captured like 20% of Ukraine. So obviously we don't have any plans to invade Europe. So that's why he's doing it slow.
You also wrote on you wrote on X, I think it was this morning, in regards to the trade balances of the U.S., China, and EU over the last 30 years. Now, and again, I'll encourage people to go on and read, follow SL, but it's now the United States, they're trying to, they're keep working, they want to keep their dominance by force. So what you were saying, and correct me here if I'm getting it wrong, but now what they're going to do is to attempt to break up Russia and China's alliance.
Yeah.
how do you project they'll attempt to do that?
So that's but Trump's fantasy or his strategy. It's a but good strategy in a very Machiavellian way because the U.S. Plus China can defeat Russia. Okay, and the U.S. Plus Russia can defeat China. Right. So this is the dynamics. But Russia plus China will not be able to defeat the US, but they'll be able to withstand the US, right? So they won't fall. So together, that's their future, right? So Putin and Xi Jinping have known each other for more than a decade. They call themselves the best friend, and they've been working on the BRICS expansion and for de-dollarization. So Trump gave a speech saying that if we lose the dollar as the global reserve currency, the U.S. will become a third world country. So, but Trump actually said that. So that's why Trump wants to stop the de-dollarization. Trump wants to stop the BRICS expansion, and Trump wants to see if he can drive a wedge between Russia and China. So he can try, but I don't think it's going to work.
What about
I mean, well, unless, so Trump makes like a grand offer to Xi Jinping saying, buddy, listen, I will let you take back, Taiwan, and I will lift all the sanctions and the tariffs on you. So, but you can make China great again. And in return, I want you to sever the relations with Russia. Wow, that will be very tempting for China.
what about for Putin to for a ceasefire in Ukraine? Does the United States have the upper hand? And this is, what was explained to me yesterday, where they'll put Putin in a position to, force him to accept a deal or escalate this, but it'll be a shitty deal. But I've talked to other people, they say Putin's not going to do that. He doesn't need to do
No.
that.
Yeah, so Putin is, winning in Ukraine, right? So that is the only reason that, as a Blinken, so gave a speech a few days ago, and he told Ukraine uh, 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 to reduce the drafting age. The the conscription age for the Ukrainian military from 25 to 18, because but Ukraine has basically run out of men. Okay, and you look at the Ukrainian the military, the average age of the soldier in the battlefield is now 45. Okay, so they've lost all the men in their late 20s and 30s. They've all been sent to the meat grinder. They don't have any men. That's the whole reason that the U.S. started sending the long range missiles to Ukraine because they're losing the battle on the ground. So Russia is winning, and Russia has already won for all practical matter in Ukraine. So, and Trump wants to end the war anyways. Trump is not a big fan of wars, and but Trump knows all the secrets about how the U.S. armed the Nazis. The whole of Ukraine is run by Nazis with a Jewish leader and with Jewish oligarch. Okay, so the top guys are Jews, but the bottom guys are all freaking Nazis. The Azov battalion, they have all the Nazi, the insignia. They all do the Hitler salute, the Hail salute. They have, yeah, it's just like, just like Syria is full of jihadists, but Ukraine is full of Nazis. So, and Trump knows that, and so that's why Trump wants to put an end to all this stupidity of the Biden administration.
How will they, will the powers that be allow him to stop this in the Middle East?
Well, if okay, so Biden is sending billions and billions of dollars as much as possible before Trump takes power. Okay, so they just yesterday or day before yesterday, Biden said he's going to give Ukraine $50 billion that are stolen from the Russian foreign exchange reserves. So it's like twice the crime. But on day one, Trump just has to say, to tell Zelensky, so no more money for you, no more weapons for you. And the war will be over in a week.
What about the Middle East?
The Middle East, I don't know what Trump can do. So, I mean, Trump uh, will I mean, so I read somewhere that but Trump told Netanyahu to wrap up all the wars before January 20th. That was Trump's the demand for Netanyahu.
How do you feel about Trump taking office as it applies to, India where you live and
Yeah,
the other regions that you cover?
I think Trump is okay. I mean, Trump is like, sometimes he's like so brilliant, you know. I mean, I was uh, looking at his the tweet from 2013. Okay, like 11 years ago, Trump said, "Hey, the Syrian rebels are going to fly planes into our buildings." Okay, so in 2013, Trump knew that the Syrian rebels were, the Al Qaeda. Okay, so that was a truth that nobody in the mainstream, the US, the mainstream media, think tank, politician, nobody would dare to say the truth. And he just blurts out the truths, you know. So sometimes he's like super brilliant, and sometimes he's very stuck in his the old, the misguided things like I'm going to, put 100% tariffs to get rid of the trade deficit, which is not going to happen.
Yeah, and that's not going to work either, right? I mean, based on, yeah.
Yeah. So, sometimes he's like super smart, and sometimes he's very stubborn.
How do you feel then globally where we're at? I mean, it's been a hard week, but do you see a brighter day ahead, or in your view, things are going to get worse in the geopolitical front?
Yeah. So, what the key is about, the managers of the blob, the US deep state. If they can say, okay, we will accept a world in which we are going to be like multipolar, meaning some parts of the world, Russia will have a lot of influence, some parts of the world, China will have a lot of influence, and some parts of the world, the Europeans will have a lot of influence, and then the U.S. will be one of the major players. So like that is the multipolar world, and that's how the world has been, since human civilization, sharing the powers. So if the empire managers in Washington, D.C. and Wall Street if they can accept that, the world will have more peace. But if they say, no, we're going to continue the American century, we want to have military bases all over the world, we're going to kick ass, we're going to do regime changes whenever we want, wherever we want, then that's going to be a lot of chaos.
Somehow I feel like that's where we're heading.
Yeah, yeah, it's very sad, because these guys, so I spoke with, I mean, Jeffrey Sachs. So if you can get him on your show, it'll be fantastic.
Can you connect me?
So,
Do you know him well?
I mean, well, I did like an interview, but I went through a third party, so I can ask them, but I don't have his the direct contact. He's a brilliant guy. So I asked him why are there only a very, very few smart people like you in the US? And he gave a long answer about how these people are stuck in like the echo chamber, and the salaries would determine how the think tanks and the media run the narratives. And these people, they would never talk to anybody who have different views. They, so if they say Putin bad, Bashar Assad bad, brutal dictator, whoever they don't like becomes a brutal dictator. Okay. Just like they demonize Trump, right? So Trump doesn't go along with the deep state. So he's a fascist, he's a Nazi, he's an authoritarian, all the same freaking slogans.
So where can people find you?
Oh, on Twitter, Substack, on Twitter X would be Kanthan 2030.
As always, thank you so much for coming back on. And it's too long, man, in between conversations.
I know, so let's make it a plan to speak like once every 3-4 months regularly.
Absolutely. And we'll check in after the first of the year, and we'll see where we're at.
Yeah, if we're still alive without a nuclear war.
If a nuclear war happens, here's my thing: put it right where I'm at. Just the same with the aliens. I've seen the aliens flying around. The alien talk. I don't know about you. I'm not interested in that. People they love the aliens. I don't I don't get it. I don't have any. Do you have any, like, does that interest you at all?
No, why? I mean, we can't even. Okay, so like if the aliens come, okay, so they have to be much, much smarter than we are. Okay, so it's going to be like as if, I mean, the Europeans, they came to the Americas and then they found the savages, you know. So the aliens would be like, look at these savages fighting over little things, and they will just kill us all, or they will take like one sample from each country and they will lock us up in a zoo, so the children can watch the stupid human beings.
If I want aliens, I can go to my local Walmart. There's aliens running around there. I I put that on X. And I'll tell you the other one that and I had Ben Davison on here, and he was talking about the solar flares and magnetic poles and the shifting, and you know what am I going to do? I can't. There's nothing I can do about that. If that's going to happen, I don't want to be in the high mountains surviving that. Well, who would want to live through? Who would want to live after that?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I can't worry about that.
Exactly. I mean, people have these fantasies because they know the world we live in is so screwed up. So they want something, a fresh start. Oh yeah, let's go to Mars. Yeah, let's bring in the aliens. It's just a sad state of how the world is.
Kayfabe for sure. SL, thanks again, and look forward to more conversations ahead.
Thank you, Michael. Same here. And if I don't speak with you, have a wonderful, happy New Year.
Same to you. Talk soon. Mic
Okay,
drop.
bye.